content is king. I don't believe that you can produce too much content because there's all these filters and things like that. And if you put enough out there, more people will see it. Welcome to the Matt Laricy Project. This is a show about all things real estate, business, marketing, and entrepreneurship. Each show consists of myself, Matt Laricy, and a guest. This week, we don't have a guest. We have a fellow MLG team member, Mr. Matt Piazza. Matt, how are we doing today?
Doing good.
Matt, you are here to discuss Season 3, Ep 11, I Want to Buy in 2021. A big thing we're getting right now is we have a lot of clients that are prepping to buy next year. We're doing a lot of Zoom consultations, a lot of phone calls. We're speaking to a lot of people, getting a lot of emails from people who are saying like, hey, this is going to be my year to buy. Matt, are you experiencing a lot as well?
Yeah, I would say to touch on that, it's like, a lot of my buyers are, putting it on hold till after Thanksgiving, after Christmas, and picking up where they left off or starting fresh in the new year.
The pause was a big thing that we were hearing about. Like buyers were saying that we're on pause, and then they got up again and they started looking, and then the presidential election hit, and then they went on pause, and then people were excited to look again, and then JB yesterday, today's November 18th? Yes, November 18th, and we are going back into a Tier 3 type of lockdown on the 20th. So a lot of buyers are now re-entering the pause phase.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people even this weekend that I've reached out to touch on, see if they want to see places, have said, well, let's see how the lockdown goes and see what we're able to do. I mean, I think with real estate, it follows with, kind of the stay inside order that they just implemented, and it kind of people feel like they shouldn't be going in homes if they can't even go into a restaurant.
Correct. Yeah, we're seeing that's a big thing we have. So what we wanted to do is kind of give everybody the head start of all the questions that people are asking us. And we're just going to kind of start with them. And we got these from our team members, but our team members are getting from their clients, what some of our marketing people thought are questions that they came up with. And then a lot of these came from social media. So first one, if I'm looking to buy, where do I start? I think you should start by finding an agent. Get an agent that can walk you through the process to give you the ins and outs. Matt, what's usually the first thing you tell people to start with?
Well, I think understanding the process for a lot of people becomes more important. And that probably starts with an agent, but at least somebody that can explain you what steps to expect. When you can get your money back is like a big question. Well, if I don't like this, when am I able to back out?
What's the liquidity?
If I decide I find something in a week from now, what's going to happen to me if I want to cancel this deal or so on and so forth. And I think people underestimate the costs if you've never done it. I think that's why it's nice working with another agent when you're on the sell side who knows what they're doing, because their client isn't in the dark on the whole transaction. And it's like, oh, I didn't know I had to submit this amount of earnest money or things like that. So
education is always first, which is why we're saying find yourself an agent, get to learn the process, get moving on it. What kind of questions should I ask when you conduct interviews of agents? I think you should ask, first off, if they do this full time. I mean, we meet a lot of people who don't do it full time. And I think the second question you should ask is, do you work in the area I want to buy in? We deal with a lot of agents. We work, most of the downtown markets that come from the suburbs. They've never been to where they're going to be showing their clients. The big question we always get, what do you hate when people ask you before they come to a show and that's a buyer? That's a buyer's agent.
Where can I park?
Yes, that's what I was hoping you'd say. Where can I park? It's like you get that text like, hey, is there parking? Where can I park? Like, oh my god,
like what? Like, oh great.
So if you're a buyer out there, just make sure that they're available and that they service the area that you work in, and that they actually understand the business as well, because there's a lot of people who just got their license, they don't know anything. Those are the main questions to start with. Okay. We won't get in too deep in the weeds with all of them, but those three are very important ones. Is there any first-time buyer programs out there? As of right now, there is not. Biden does have a couple first-time buyer programs on his ticket that is going to possibly get passed. It's a ways down, but it's mostly focused on lower-income stuff. My lease is up in August. How far out should I start looking? I always tell people it's good to start early to get the education, but I'd say it's a little bit too far out to start physically looking. I mean, Matt, what do you experience? When people look out too far, don't they get too overwhelmed almost?
I mean, I don't like to, push people away from looking at properties, but if somebody tells me that their lease is up in May or June and it's November, I mean, I just like them to know that like anything you look at today is not going to be what you're going to experience. It's not an option. It's either gone, or if it is still available, you probably don't want it. So I think it's good to get out there a little bit and get your feet wet. But if you're looking at 10 properties a week with them, you know, it makes it tough, not only on yourself, but on them. They're just going to be overwhelmed.
Well, what happens is you go through a lot of heartbreak. Like you see a place, you love it, you can't buy it, it sells. Then you see a place, you love it, you can't buy it, it sells. And you start getting really frustrated. So what I would say is that, let's say, you know, right now it's November, your lease is up in August. I would say it's not a bad idea to meet an agent, get an understanding of the process, get going on a search.
Just be on a weekly search.
Correct.
So you're seeing the
check
inventory.
in. But if let's use August 1st is when your lease is up, I would say that I wouldn't start looking until like April. You know, no, that seems like a far ways away, but it's not that far. But you don't want to start too far in advance if you want to make sure that you don't buy before August 1st. I'm debating about buying or renting. Should I rent one more year or buy with what I think will be a wave of foreclosures to come? You know, we work the big city. I mean, we don't see – how many foreclosures do you think you see?
I mean, I get them sent to me periodically from clients, but it's
the pre-foreclosures unsold that are
yeah,
not real.
and it's exactly
They drive me crazy.
along with the Zestimate.
Yeah.
And
those are super accurate, by the way.
I
guys.
don't. I try to stay away from them for the client's sake, because if it's too good to be true in this business, it usually is.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I would say that if you're debating about buying or renting, I would buy. I mean, renting is throwing money away, in my opinion. You're paying somebody else's mortgage, and the second thing is that, you know, people always tell me, well, like, I'm going to wait for this because I think it's going to be X, or I'm going to wait for this because I think this is going to happen. The reality is, like, nobody can predict the future. As much as we think we know what's going on, too, we look at the patterns, we try to predict what we can, and then shit like Corona hits.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, nobody saw that coming. So my point is that, personally, I don't think there's a wave of foreclosures in downtown Chicago. If you want to buy next year, buy. I wouldn't rent again. If I am buying a condo, what should I look for in a building? I always talk about making sure that the building is financially well ran. Make sure that it has a good amount of reserves. Rent caps are a big thing that come up a lot, right?
Every time. I mean, I think it's 50-50 with buyers, where some of them are like, well, I want to be able to rent it. So
the
I want
option.
I want the option, because I'm 24 and I want to be a landlord at 27. I mean,
right.
That sounds great until you realize, you know, where your next property is going to come from. It's probably going to come from the property you're going to sell.
From the equity you get in here. Or
so,
Corona hits and then nobody can rent their places anymore.
Exactly. And I think, so yeah, the rent caps are a big deal. And some people just want, you know, you don't want 60% rentals.
You know, the best thing when you're looking at a building is make it line up with the, you know, what you're looking for, what your goals are. Do you like a high amenity building with, you know, fitness room and gym and, you know, all the pools and the high amenities, or do you want to have no frills and low assessments? But, you know, the main thing is make sure that the building is at least decently well ran. Mm-hmm. What should I do to prep for getting out on showings the second new listings hit the market in January? So this is a big thing. We see a lot of listings hit in January. Are you talking to a lot of sellers about pulling properties off the market right now?
Yeah, we're probably going to do that right after Thanksgiving, and, you know, give it a rest for all December at least.
Yeah, I talked about this about 2 podcasts ago about should I sell during the holidays. You know, at least half of our sellers are coming off for the holidays. And, you know, a lot of them aren't going to relist till March or April, but there's going to be a ton of inventory that's going to hit January 2nd or 3rd. And if you're a buyer out there, not only are you going to say, hey, well, you may be thinking that you're going to have a leg up because there won't be that many buyers, but I am telling you that the reason we're doing this podcast is because so many of our clients want to look right after the first of the year, and you are not alone. And when those listings hit, we're going to start seeing a different mentality in the market. We're going to start seeing those things fly. So be prepared. Meet with an agent now. Get on a search so you're ready to go.
To add into that, another layer, do you think that, you know, maybe being on during the holidays, being one of the only few on the holidays, is it worth leaving it up for, you know, that 1 to 10% of buyers that are still looking during that time?
The only way I would say I would is if I'm like still relatively new, like maybe 70, 80 days or less, right? If I've been on the market for 6+ months, I think it's time to just throw in the towel a little bit.
Make it look
and I do agree that you have a 10% chance to sell, but it's like after this much time, 6 months plus on, I think you got to give it a little bit of a break to kind of like refresh it a little bit.
Right.
When do you expect new listings to drop? I expect a lot more new listings to start dropping realistically in March is when we'll see like the biggest wave of inventory hit. The people who list in January are going to win because they're going to come off with a lot less competition, and you're going to have a lot more demand. Generally speaking, people want to list the day after the Super Bowl. That's a big one you hear all the time.
Yeah.
What is a reserve? So for people out there, this is a big question. Reserves are your savings account for a building. If you don't have enough money in your savings, your reserves, you have special assessments. We see specials. Do you get asked about specials all the time?
Yeah, I mean, there's 5 questions that happen on a showing, and if 2 of them aren't reserves and special assessments, the agent doesn't know what they're asking. But it's a big deal, and like you said, financially stable buildings and special assessments, because you want to know if there's projects coming up in that building.
Yeah, I mean, you want to make sure that like the building has somewhat of reserves. But remember, guys, if you're buying a 3 or 4 unit building and your HOAs are $150 a month, you're going to have nothing in reserves because they're pay-as-you-go buildings. Bigger buildings are going to have bigger reserves. Is there any types of constructions I should be concerned by? My friend told me split face was a problem. Is this true? Split face has, they don't use it anymore, and it's not technically the greatest construction in the world. But I'll tell you right now, if you have a $400,000 to $650,000, if you have a $650,000 and under budget, and you're looking in the west side, like West Loop, West Town, Wicker, Bucktown, parts of Lakeview, it's unavoidable.
Yeah.
It's like 80% of properties, and I get it. Your friend told you that.
Yeah, I mean,
their friend told you never to buy it, but like
the issue is that's just one of those like buzzwords that it's like they hear it and then that's all they ask. What's the outside?
When was
what's
the
the
last time it was
exterior? What's it sealed?
The reality is, if you seal split face and it's kept up well,
right.
It's not. I mean, it's not great, but it's not like the end of the world. I mean, listen, nowadays a lot of builders are using really shitty brick. The brick is very porous, and it's, you can see when you drive past new construction, we see all that white salt that's just like sitting on there because the brick is already deteriorating. So, and now people are using hardy board. I mean, hardy board I've punched hardy board before and I put my hand right through it. I think I'm not a tough guy.
No,
okay?
But you are going to Mayweather.
I am going to Mayweather Gym now, but nobody, you can't ever say anything's perfect.
I think it goes back to just a healthy building. I mean, if you have a very unhealthy, unstable building that doesn't keep up with its maintenance, then it's probably a problem to have something like a more porous brick or a whatever. I mean, but if you have a well-maintained building and you say, well, 8 months ago we resealed it, every year we have somebody come out and look at it, now that's a different story.
That's the thing, guys, is nobody ever gets involved. The average American is the let George do it mentality. Who George is always the guy that's supposed to get it done, and nobody ever gets it done. So don't let George do it. You got to do it. If you take care of the building yourself and you get it looked at, like Matt just said, it'll be fine. Will we be seeing tons of multiple bids? Yes. I think multiple bids are crazy. Don't you remember in May when every agent in the city told you that they don't want to work? You guys have to remember, in May, agents were telling us that they don't want to work with buyers. They only want to work with sellers because the market's so hot. This was May of this year, guys. This was 4 or 5. How long ago? 5 months ago? 6? 7 months ago? I can't do math. But anyways, it was a little bit ago. Now everybody's saying like they never want to work with sellers. They only want to work with buyers. Like, we can't be a prisoner of the moment society. I mean, the market's going to change. I think. Do you remember were you working here Q1 of 17 after Trump?
Yeah.
I mean, that market was crazy. And everybody said the world was going to end because, we're entering a new presidency and blah, blah, blah. And then 17 was crazy. And I think the same thing's going to happen in 21. I also think people are going to come back 2021 and say, new year, new me. Like, if something shitty happens, right? What do you say right now? You're like, it's 2020, right?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter
it's
what it is.
2020. That's it. I think people are going to come back 2021 and be like, this is a new year. This is going to be a great year. I think people thought this year sucked so badly, they're going to have different hopes.
I
going
think
into
positivity will be at new highs for anything.
How important is it to get them improved? How far out should I get improved? I would get approved ASAP. Right now, if you're looking with the tier 3 lockdowns, like agents are going back to making you have. Don't you think it's hilarious? Like 2 weeks ago, nobody asked you for shit. There's no coronavirus. Things are completely gone now. Now you got to sign a coronavirus waiver again, and most of the time you have to submit an approval letter for your client. And you get drilled about like how serious your client is. Which is, listen, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I mean, like, this is a real virus. But like, if you want to get into places in the next 45 days, you're going to need one. And I think you want to get a leg up on what? Understand how much you can afford, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing that people neglect is when they get a pre-approval and it says I can afford a $500,000 condo. Now that changes, right? Like if your taxes are $20,000 and your HOA is $1,200, that's a different price point than if you buy a single family home and your taxes are $3,000.
Right. Right, and the other thing is the numbers. You have to look at what, you might be able to afford a $500,000 condo, but like he's saying, like, is $3,000 a month okay for you, or is $7,000 a month okay for you because the HOAs and taxes are different? So you need to understand the numbers and the closing costs, and that's something your lender can do. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure you get that process started right away. Because I'll tell you right now, you start looking at $500,000 properties, and then you realize you can only afford $300,000, you're done. There's no going back.
Well, you're not going to have a washer dryer.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
mean, that's what's going to happen. You're going to drop 200 grand. You're going to be
You
like,
just
there's no
lost-
parking here, and I
Yeah,
don't
you
have a
just lost
washer
your
dryer.
Or
That's
it. It's gone. That's it. We're taking it
Sure,
away.
we can change the
Yeah.
price. You know.
What sets one buyer apart from another? Honestly, I mean, I don't know what the question's referring to, but it would come down to affordability and your financial strength. That's what would set it apart if we're in a multiple bid. I'm not sure if that's what that was getting at. Are personal letters included with offers still a thing? If you're in a multiple bid, yeah. I guess if like you're coming in really low, it wouldn't be a bad idea to try to soften the blow.
Yeah, I mean, I push for it. Sometimes people are a little uncomfortable. I think there's.
Do you read your letters that your clients send you?
I try to skim through them because then it's, you know, I definitely read them, but it's more the thing for me is if you lose the property, then the buyer is kind of like, and I encourage it if it's like you're coming in lower, it's a multiple bid.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, there's nothing like a client that spills their heart out only to get a no, and then they're like, give me my fucking letter back.
Yeah.
Rip it up.
I usually don't read the letters.
Yeah,
they're very personal.
Yeah, and that's
I almost
that's what
feel
I mean.
bad. I almost
well,
feel like
that's
it's
what
a
I mean.
violation
If
of
you win, it's
privacy.
great. If you lose, it's almost like why did I just spill my heart out to these people?
You know, personal letters are really big if it's a heated multiple bid because you know I've won out
Puts
a
a
lot
face
of times.
behind the number.
Correct. Yeah, and if it's a $2,000 difference and you know you guys grew up in the same hometown, sometimes you know
Right.
it is a very emotional process for a lot of people. Which neighborhoods are going to be the most competitive next year? I think I'm going to go with West Loop because the West Loop's always hot. And
No,
I think
standard answer.
I think it's going to be very hot. But I do think I'm going to go on a limb here, and I'm going to say River North is going to be. Right now, River North and Loop are two of the worst neighborhoods to buy in today because they're the most de-stressed. But with people going back to work, I think the competition is going to go back. Nobody wants to be by public transportation right now, but I do think once people are going back to work, I think public transportation is coming back.
Yeah.
Matt, what do you think?
Well, I'm biased. I live in Bucktown, and I think the reason we left
Is it Bucktown?
Bucktown. So the reason that we love Bucktown is we have a dog, a baby, and you can walk around and it's got that neighborhood feel, but you're still in the city. Even though you guys don't think that we're still in the city, it's still the city. And in all honesty,
45 minutes to get
you get it took 8 minutes to get to the office. You just get more space, I think, and what people are
But we're
fixated
talking
on
about
right now
competitive.
is
Do
space.
you think Bucktown's will be competitive?
I
with
think.
multiple bids? See, that's what I'm saying. It's
I
like,
think
I'm not
Wicker
saying-
Park and Bucktown are still there's still potential. Yeah, I'm just not going to take the easy answer and say West Loop.
Well, West Loop is the easy answer because it's probably going to be the most competitive.
It's
that's
always
that's
the most
answer to
competitive,
question.
though. It always is.
But my dark horse is I think River North's going to come back. River
I'll
North
take
is-
all right. If we're taking dark, I'll take Ravenswood.
All right, you guys heard it. He's going with Ravens, so I'm going to go with River North for the dark horse.
2021, the year of Ravenswood.
Yeah. Our high-rise sales go. Oh, look at this. Our high-rise sales going to pick up in 2021. I think they will. I think people have been avoiding high-rises like the plague. I think they're going to get this version of the plague by going into them.
Yeah.
So I do think, and in all honesty, sales in high-rises are so shitty right now that I don't really think they could go much farther down than they are now. So if you're asking me, do I think there'll be more next year than this year? This is the worst year for high rises pretty much in the history of Chicago. I mean, I can't say that as a fact. Let's back it up. It's got to be one of the worst years. You know,
I haven't. Yeah,
when's
I
the last time you
haven't.
sold a high rise?
I've showed some high rises, but it's inevitable that we're going to end up looking at some of the 2 and 3 unit buildings.
Guys, we normally sell like a high rise unit every single week or every single day of the week. Last year, and as long as I've been in the business, since we've been successful, we're doing like one every 4 to 5 days max now. So our point is that like it can only go up from here. They definitely have to be better, and that's why my dark horse pick is River North.
I mean, a lot of the things too are restrictions are still in place. Like they follow suit with these restaurants and all these things.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a couple buildings, not to call anybody out, but like, you know, it's, do you have the form? Do you have this? You know, and it's like maybe somebody wants to see your property last minute, and it just makes it extremely difficult. And I understand it makes it difficult for the safety of the building, but
Right.
now you're talking about, well, we got to run to CVS, buy gloves, come back here, fill this form out. I mean,
Right.
it's a process, and then
Yeah.
you can't see amenities, which are a big feature of some of these buildings and
That's
a
right.
big selling point. And now you're not even able to see the pool.
Right.
It's kind of hard to pull the trigger on $1 million place when you can't see a lot of the things it has to offer and why your assessment's so high.
You know, you have to realize, guys, when you hear this, you may be listening and saying like, "Well, Matt's clients are being ridiculous because they don't want to follow this protocol, and this is very real disease." And we're not disagreeing with you, but what we are telling you is there's a lot of people who have millions of dollars that don't give a shit, and they call you 2 hours notice to get into a property, and they'll buy it today. And if they can't see that one because of the restrictions, they'll just go buy a different one. And they do. It happens all the time. Now, that's probably 2% of buyers, but in a market that's a sinking ship for high rises, like you pretty much got to make yourself available at all times.
Yeah, I mean, you get a last minute showing. You're not the one declining it.
Right.
Let's just say that.
Yeah, it's the building. What are you telling MLG clients to do to prepare? I'm telling people to get ready. Get everything done now. Get your approval letter. Get your search up. Have an idea where you're going to go, because I've said this for about 4 months now. Strap in. Q1's going to be nuts. And the reason we're doing this, I mean, I had 4 Zooms yesterday now. I'm averaging 3 to 5 Zooms a day with buyers who want to buy right after the first of the year. I'm one person. A lot of agents I talk to tell me the same thing. Matt's seeing the same thing with his clients. So my point is that like I'm telling them to get ready, because all these price changes, stale market, and this doom and gloom media is all going to go away. And after 2021, after 2020 is done with, and we start 2021, we're going to be in for a big, big reckoning, and that reckoning is going to be an amazing real estate market in the city. We're calling it the Great Migration Back. What should agents be doing to prep? We just get into that. What are the best neighborhoods to invest in? I don't know if we could actually answer what are the best is, because I think that is staring technically. But I can tell you some, if you're going to invest in anywhere in Chicago, I always say that you have to figure out what type of investor you are. Are you a cash flow investor? Are you a long-term investor? Do you want to own the ground? You have to determine where you want to go, Yeah,
I think that's a personal taste thing.
Correct. So. Where do you get the best bang for your buck in Chicago? There's a lot of, affordability goes a long way. The type of product you could get in most parts of like Lincoln Park and Lakeview are very similar to Wicker Park and Bucktown. A lot of walk-ups, old buildings. It goes down to, your dollar is going to stretch farther the further away you get away from the city. So look at the Hancock as like the gold statue. Not saying the Hancock's the most expensive building. I'm just saying think of that as like the center of the city. As you continue to get farther away, things typically get cheaper. Now, if you go all the way up to Matt's dark horse candidate of Ravenswood, your dollar's going to go further than if you're in, River North. So just think about the further away you get, the more your dollar will go. Is commuting different for any neighborhood after COVID? I mean, it's easier. I mean, Matt just made here from the suburbs in 8 minutes. So in a normal day, it takes you like 50, 60 minutes to get here? Hour?
About 11.
So
I think the Ohio exit is where most of my traffic is.
Yeah, I mean, listen, here's where commuting's different. Is that like a lot of people who are moving to Hinsdale or Wilmette or one of these places, and they're like, hey, this is great. I can make it into the city in 20 minutes. That's because there's only 16%, guys. As of right now, there's 16% of people working at offices in Chicago.
Yeah.
When that number goes to 100%, do you think you're going to be making it in that quickly when everybody else is working? So, yeah, people are a little bit nervous of public transportation today, but that's not going to be the case in 2021.
I mean, people also forget, if you've ever come from north or south on a Friday afternoon, and right now, I don't know what the statistics are, but there's certainly a lot less flights coming into O'Hare.
Right.
And when you catch that on a Friday, let's say around the holidays or in the fall, I mean, even July, but if you catch it the wrong time.
When was the last time you really seen a lot of traffic though? Where you were like, oh my God, where does traffic come from?
Honestly, the last time was when my exit was closed and I had to go all the way to the split and come all the way back.
When all the protests were going on.
Yeah, so that was the only time when they closed all the exits and people were trying to figure out.
Normal
rush hour.
Protests.
No, I haven't.
I
I can make it from Bucktown to Millennium Park, for instance, in about 14 minutes.
There's no cars on the road.
Right.
There's nobody out, especially now again. Will January 2021 still be a buyer's market? When would that flip? I'm going to call on record January 15th is going to be the date the market's going to officially flip to a seller's market. And the reason I think that's going to be the case is I don't think the inventory is going to be able to keep up with the demand. I think we're going to start seeing multiple bids like crazy again. You're going to start seeing these agents that drive me crazy that tell me oh my God, they're so busy, or they're so slow right now. They're like, oh my God, can you believe how busy I am? Blah, blah, blah. I hate that word busy. It drives me crazy. But
I never use it.
What's the definition of busy? I always say, what's your definition of busy? You know what I mean? We're doing $200 million this year in business. You don't hear me walking around and be like, oh my God, I'm so busy. It's just ridiculous. But my point is January 15th is when we're going to see this market flip. Is there going to be any deals in 2021? in October of 2021, you'll start seeing deals. This is what I'm telling my investors right now that want to buy a deal. I'm like, you got 45 days. Mm-hmm. And after 45 days, you're going to have to wait till October of next year.
Yeah, I mean, I have a property that went all of a sudden in a flash, and, not to list the property, but, multiple bids out of nowhere. And I said, you got to take this now, or you can take a chance and wait and see.
Right.
But, I mean...
That's the thing, guys, is like for our sellers listening there, when we say it's going to be a seller's market, the prices aren't going to go up, okay? It's not like you have your place on the market today at $400,000, and then, January 15th hits and the place is worth $450,000.
Right, and that's what I told my seller, that one that I'm talking about, is I just said, you can take a chance. There may be more, but there's also going to be a lot more.
Here's the difference. There's going to be, your place is worth $400,000 today. No, you have no showings. In January 15th, your place can be worth $400,000 and you have 10 showings, and hopefully it sells close to your number. That's going to be the difference. And buyers out there, we're not telling you to get a move on it now. We're just telling you be prepared for things to sell really quickly.
Yeah, but worst case is you have 10 showings and no offers.
Right. But the way I'm telling people, here's going to be the difference of the first quarter market to today. If it's Monday of this week, hypothetically, right, and you're like, hey, Matt, I want to see these 6 properties on Saturday. By Saturday, all 6 of those properties remain. If this is January 15th and you give me 6 properties on a Monday and you're like, I want to see all these properties on Saturday.
2.
Maybe 2. I'm going 1. And then we're going to walk in and you know what that broker's going to be like?
I'm so busy.
And we got an offer. I'm so busy and we got an offer on this.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the difference. Prices aren't going to go gangbusters, but it's going to feel like you're going to feel like you have a gun in the head. Right now, buyers in the driver's seat. That's all. That's the difference.
I just think be ready. Like, that's the thing. Be ready that's what you're saying. Like, get your stuff in order so that, like, you know the process and you know exactly what to do when you do want to pull the trigger on something, because they are going to go quicker. So you want to make sure that you're not asking questions along the way and maybe dragging your feet in that process.
Correct. Is there going to be more or less inventory at the beginning of this year compared to last? I'm going to say there's going to be a little bit more, but because actually this January was actually really low. But I will tell you, I'm going to be go on a limb. I don't think a lot of the people who came off the market that we're going to sell are going to continue to sell next year. We personally have a lot of people who wanted to sell. They're like, I think I want to move to the burbs. I'm not going back to work. With this vaccine, a lot of those people are like, shit, I'm going back to work. Like, I didn't really want to sell. Mm-hmm. I could sit here another year or 2, and I'm going to wait it out. So I don't think there's going to be. I'm going to go say like maybe 5 to 7% more inventory than last year. So not a ton. How will the city market differ from the burb market? Great migration back. The suburb market sucked forever until the last couple months. Let me tell you something, guys. Let's wait till 2020 is over before you tell me how hot that suburb market. All you suburb agents out there that are telling me, bragging me the market's great. I'm glad your stats are up the last few months. Let's see at the end of the year over year compared to year over year 19 total, if it did well. Maybe your area did gangbusters. Maybe it didn't. I don't know. It's too hard to tell right now. I do know that a lot of the suburbs were dead March, April, May, June, okay? And typically suburbs aren't hot January and February. So the last few months have been really hot, but they're also experiencing all-time low inventory, which means that they can't have as many sales because there's not as much inventory in the market, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard to say, but what I will tell you is I think a lot of people are coming back to the city next year due to a lot of people, going out of town for living at their families' places in Arizona and Florida. They're living in their parents' basements. They're renting in the suburbs until this whole thing blows over. And we're going to see the great migration back, and I think the burbs are going to suffer because of it. How much do new buyers have saved for their down payment? Ideally speaking, 20%, right? 20%.
Unless you want a PMI. But
pay juice. But, I mean, if you can't save 20%, you do 10. If you can't do 10, you do 5. Nothing in between.
Some people like paying that PMI because not everybody has the 20% and they want to save it. If they do, that maybe they want to keep it.
You can wait.
Maybe you want it in the stock market.
Right.
You know?
I mean, PMI goes away once you get to 20%.
I think everybody's really scared of PMI in the sense that it's like, oh my God, that's an insurance policy if you don't know what that is, but it's about $150 a month. Some people would rather pay the $150 a month than come up with 20% to put down, and then that money's stuck in that condo or home for the next 5-7 years.
Everybody's got different ways. Personally, I think if you have the excess cash, it doesn't affect your life at all. To put 20% down, you put 20% down.
Right.
If you can't, go to 10 and save up some money to eventually pay it off. If you pay off PMI 2 years later, but you wanted that extra money to repaint your cabinets or do something in your place, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, maybe you need to do some work to the place you're buying.
Right. Is there going to be more? We got that. will it be easier or harder in 2021 to get a mortgage loan approved versus 2020? I think it's going to be easier. The biggest problem right now is self-employed people. It's almost impossible to get a loan in 2020. I think 2021 will loosen up a little bit. What sales goals will you set for 2021? So this year was 220 million, right? Was the goal?
Yeah.
So next year it's got to be more. We're not going to reach 220, just for everybody out there. We're going to come close. Well, somewhat close. We'll do over 200 million, but we'll probably fall 15 minutes. I don't know. Well, I'm going to say right now our goal is going to be 250 million, which is a far way off from where we're at. I like to reach for the stars. I mean, even though we didn't get 220 last year and you're like, hey, Matt, you want to do an extra 50 million in 2021? Yes. I think the year's going to be gangbusters, and I think it's attainable. I like to go for something that people say we can't do. When people tell me I can't do something, I can only hear that I can do something. You know who said that? Arnold Schwarzenegger. Oh. It's one of his 5 key points, guys.
Okay.
Now that the presidential election results are in, how do you expect them to impact the market? You know what? I'm not going to be the dead horse here. We did a whole podcast about this in our last one. I would say tune into that. But I will tell you that with the election being done with, the mentality is going to change and the market's going to get better. Why is some parking listed as extra? It's a good one. For some people out there who don't know, if you see something that's listed at 300 plus 35, the actual asking price is 335. They listed extra because what do we call extra parking, Matt?
Additional parking.
It's called deeded parking.
Deeded parking. Basically, can I touch on that one?
Sure.
So what we do a lot of times is if all these algorithms for all these different user-friendly sites is they search in $25,000 increments, a lot of them. So if you list your property at 335, like he just said, now you're going to lose a lot of people that cap their search at 300.
Correct.
So not to, steer people in the wrong direction or mislead them, but it does show up in a lot more people's search. And in all honesty, if you can afford 300, typically speaking, you can afford 320 or 310 that you may get that parking thrown in for. It's not a set price, but it is all bundled together. And it's just a way for more people to get their eyes on your property. Now, that's only if it's a deeded spot. So if you have an assigned spot, you can't charge people for it.
Correct. In little buildings, you can't. But also another reason, guys, is that deeded parking means you could sell it to somebody else. So a lot of buildings, actually most buildings were designed to not have enough parking spaces to go with the units. And every 2-bedroom is most of the time sold with only 1 parking space. So if I'm a 2-car family, you're a 2-car family, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of people, I like if I only had 1 car today, parking space, and where I live today, honestly, the parking space to me is valued at whatever you're willing to sell it to me.
There's a huge premium for parking.
Because I have to buy it, right? If you charge me $100,000 for parking, I probably have to pay it because my wife's not going to park in the street in River North.
I would say almost every listing that I have where I have a deeded spot, at some point, if it's been on the market for a little while, someone reaches out and says, hey, is your client interested in selling the parking I have, or I am an owner in the building and I would like an additional parking spot?
And just know, guys, is that, you know what? If you don't have a spot, there's a lot of millennials out there that don't have parking. You could rent it out. You get $200 a month on average. Okay, maybe 300 in some buildings, 150, whatever. On average, $200 a month. So you pay the taxes and mortgage on that space. Mm-hmm. Do you think more companies will allow employees to come back to the office? With the vaccine, we answered this in the last podcast. Yeah, that's 16%. I'm going to be on record to say it's going to be 35% by March. And I think it's going to be 50% by July. It could be higher, but those are just my guesses right now. Do you think sellers that were on the market for a large part of the year in 2020 will be more willing to negotiate a deal in 2021? I'm going to say no. I'm going to be honest with you guys. There's a lot of my sellers right now, that are telling me that when we come off the market, they want to go on at a higher price, which is ridiculous, which isn't going to happen. We're not going to do that. But, I know the facts and how to talk about the market, but there's a lot of weaker agents that are going to, probably listen to whatever the client's going to say to keep the listing.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that the biggest, even with all the inventory we've had, prices have not dropped. Prices are up in every single area of the city except for the Loop, and the Loop is down 0.8% year to date. So it's not like it's dropped 10%. So even with this inventory, sellers are still holding firm on their pricings because most sellers aren't willing to give it away. Now, if you're like, well, Matt, in this luxury $2 million high rise, I saw prices drop 5%. That's probably true. Right. Okay, I'm saying on a general basis. Okay, generally speaking, most areas are up for the general price points. When do you think you'll see a full recovery for the high-rise market? A full 100% recovery, 2022. I think next year will be really good, but I don't think it's going to be like a normal gangbusters year because people are still going to be getting back into it. I think some people, probably still a little hesitant.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
I mean, you can probably see people, even with this vaccine, you're going to see people probably wear masks throughout the whole year next year. You know, there's just going to be a lot of people who aren't just going to be like, hey, this is done, I'm not going to wear a mask. So, I think 2022, full recovery.
And I also, to touch on that real quick, I also think that usually we get a handful of buyers, or a bunch of them actually,
Right.
that are moving here, relocating here for a lot of these companies that we have, the Googles and stuff like
Right.
that. And I would say, and again, I don't know the statistics on this, but I would say there's a substantial amount of people that was put on hold for the remainder of at least the year.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people getting relocated now. They're going to work from home until that they
Right,
back in the
right.
office. What's the most important thing for me to look for when I'm buying? I would say location. Location. I always tell people go for location first, building second, unit third. That's how I described it if you're buying a condo. And if you're buying a house, I would go for location, then obviously the house itself. But if you're in a really good location, you can always sell that for the most money later. A lot of people are like, hey, I want to, I don't care what I'm buying. I want the white kitchen and the, quartz countertops. It used to, I almost stumbled there because it used to be like I wanted the, when I first got in the business, I wanted cherry cabinets and a granite countertops. Now it's white with
Corian.
quartz. Corian is actually still great stone. I got it at one of my properties, but that's a different story. It's a much better stone than quartz. Quartzite, guys, is the best stone, but that's different. We'll talk construction another day. But my point is, if you're in a fantastic location, you can always sell that for money later.
Yeah.
All right. Where do people want to find us and where do we want to plug? We'd like to plug the MattLaricygroup.com. Follow us on Instagram. Make sure to tune into our next episode and subscribe to our podcast. Thanks for listening to the Matt Laricy Project. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast, follow us on Instagram, and like us on Facebook.